In the world of modern romance, so much attention is placed on performance, on being the ideal partner. A man may think that if he says the right things, behaves in the right way, and hides his flaws well enough, he will win affection, admiration, and ultimately love. But this approach is a form of emotional theater. It's not intimacy, it's performance. And women, particularly women who are emotionally attuned and self-aware, don't fall in love with a performance. They fall in love with a presence. Presence is not about being in the room. It's about being in the moment, with full attention, emotional availability, and embodied self-awareness. It's when a man isn't just hearing but listening, when he isn't trying to impress but to connect, when he doesn't need to prove who he is, because he is already anchored in his identity. That anchoring, that ability to be fully where he is without needing to chase validation or alter who he is to fit someone else's expectations. That is what makes him magnetic. It is what makes him trustworthy, compelling, and desirable. Perfection, on the other hand, is brittle. It is a fragile mask that cracks under the weight of real intimacy. When you strive for perfection, you leave no room for spontaneity, for vulnerability, for actual human contact. You become more concerned with how you are perceived than how you are received. And when you are disconnected from your authenticity, women feel it. They might not always be able to name it, but they sense the distance. They feel the lack of emotional depth. Because love doesn't grow in the presence of perfection, it grows in the presence of truth. Presence means you are not performing your masculinity. You are not using power to control or silence to dominate. You are not disappearing into your thoughts or escaping into your devices. You are with her fully and unapologetically in this moment. And more than that, you are with yourself. You know your triggers, your needs, your limits. You have nothing to hide and nothing to chase. That level of embodiment, when a man is home within himself, is where irresistible energy is born. A woman who feels this kind of presence from a man will unconsciously soften, not because he controls her, but because she can relax into herself in his company. His groundedness gives her permission to be vulnerable. His steady gaze invites her to speak her truth. His quiet confidence allows her to feel safe. Presence isn't just attractive, it is disarming. It melts through defense mechanisms and bypasses the ego. It creates an emotional container where something real can happen. There is no perfection in real relationships. There is only curiosity, courage, and connection. There are moments of tension, rupture, repair. The man who shows up as he is, without mask or manipulation, is a rare force. His presence becomes his power not because it's loud or commanding, but because it's honest, because it's here, because it's alive. There was a time when being a man meant dominance, control, possession. It was measured in how much power you could hold, how many people you could command, how strong your voice was in the room. But that definition of masculinity is becoming obsolete, especially in the realm of intimate relationships. In this new emotional landscape, what women are increasingly drawn to is not the man who conquers the world, but the man who has conquered himself. The man who is not emotionally dependent on a woman for his sense of worth, his identity, or his happiness. Emotional independence, more than anything, has become the most irresistible quality a man can embody. To be emotionally independent is not to be emotionally distant. It doesn't mean being numb or unaffected or dismissive of your own emotional needs. On the contrary, it means being so connected to your own emotional landscape that you no longer need to outsource your emotional regulation to someone else. You don't fall apart because she hasn't texted you back. You don't panic when she pulls away. You don't become someone else just to avoid being alone. You know who you are and you are enough, whether you're partnered or not. That emotional self-sufficiency becomes the foundation of your emotional power. Women feel this kind of energy long before they consciously recognize it. It shows up in how you carry yourself, how you respond to conflict, how you move through uncertainty. A man who is emotionally needy might not say it out loud, but his actions reveal it. He chases, he clings, he pleads for reassurance. That energy, even when wrapped in good intentions, often feels heavy, suffocating, even repellent. It subtly communicates, "I need you to feel okay." And for many women, that creates emotional pressure rather than intimacy. It puts them in the position of emotional caretaker rather than equal partner. Contrast this with the man who does not grasp, who does not beg, who does not collapse when things don't go his way. He can experience desire without desperation. He can be open without being obsessive. He can love without losing himself. That balance of desire with dignity, of openness with ownership, creates a profound sense of emotional safety. And safety is what allows a woman to lean in, to trust, to let go of her own guard. This is not about pretending you don't care. It's not about playing cold or acting aloof. Emotional independence is not a performance, it is a practice. It comes from healing your own wounds, tending to your own inner child, learning to meet your own emotional needs without demanding someone else do it for you. It is about cultivating a life that is rich, meaningful, and fulfilling, with or without a romantic partner. When a man does this, his energy shifts. He no longer walks into a relationship looking for completion. He enters it from a place of wholeness, of generosity, of overflow. In that space, relationships stop being transactions. They become transformations. He is not afraid to walk away from what dishonors him. He is not addicted to her approval. He is rooted in something deeper than romance. And from that place of emotional strength, women don't just notice him, they feel drawn to him. Because true masculinity is not in how much a man can take from a woman, but in how whole he is before she even enters the picture. In the delicate dance of attraction, there is a silent language that speaks louder than words. It's not in what you say, or how much you chase, or even how perfectly you play the role of the ideal lover. It's in how you carry yourself when no one is watching. It's in the way you respond to boundaries, in how you hold your center when desire rises, in whether your need for connection outweighs your respect for yourself. The truth is, sexual energy doesn't begin in the bedroom. It begins with self-respect. Self-respect is not just about setting limits with others. It is about how you show up for yourself every day. Do you keep your word to yourself? Do you choose temporary gratification over long-term integrity? Do you compromise your values to be accepted, to be liked, to be desired? A man who respects himself does not sell himself for attention. He doesn't mold himself into what he thinks a woman wants. He stands in who he is, unshaken, unmasked, unapologetic. That unwavering alignment between his inner truth and his outer expression radiates a sexual charge that is undeniable. Women can feel the difference between a man who wants her and a man who needs her to validate his worth. The former is seductive, the latter is exhausting. The man who holds self-respect doesn't collapse at the first sign of affection. He does not abandon his dignity to keep someone interested. He knows that true intimacy can never be built on the foundation of self-betrayal. And that knowing, calm, firm, quiet is deeply attractive. It invites her into a dynamic where desire is mutual, not manipulated. There is also something intensely magnetic about a man who chooses himself, even when it costs him something. When he says no to what dishonors him, when he walks away from connections that are rooted in disrespect, when he doesn't try to convince or chase or beg, that is power. Not power over others, but the kind of power that comes from deep personal alignment. That power is felt in his posture, in his eye contact, in his silence. It's not performative, it's embodied, and it creates polarity, because nothing awakens a woman's desire more than being in the presence of a man who desires her, but doesn't need her to feel whole. When a man respects himself, he does not tolerate crumbs. He doesn't tolerate being half loved, half seen, or half chosen. He does not try to earn his place in someone else's life. He knows that his presence is already a gift. This self-regard changes everything. It dictates who he allows into his world, how he allows them to treat him, and whether he sacrifices his soul just to stay connected. And it is this kind of man, the one who holds his boundaries with grace and strength, who evokes a deeper, more primal desire in the feminine. Because when a woman sees that a man honors himself, she knows instinctively that he will honor her too. He will not use her, he will not manipulate her, he will not disappear when things get intimate. He has done the inner work. He has faced his shadows. He has earned the right to hold space for her without losing himself in the process. That is the true source of sexual polarity, not dominance, not seduction games, but self-respect that runs so deep it naturally creates trust, tension, and attraction. There's a misconception that mystery is about withholding, about being vague, unavailable, or emotionally distant to keep someone guessing. This distortion has reduced something sacred into a manipulation tactic. But real mystery, the kind that leaves a woman captivated long after the moment has passed, is not born from games. It is born from depth, from a man's relationship with his inner world, from his ability to feel, reflect, and move through life with a richness that can't be consumed in one sitting. Mystery is not the absence of information. It is the presence of something profound that is continuously unfolding. A man becomes mysterious not because he's hiding, but because he's rooted in something internal that cannot be easily labeled. He's not trying to impress with curated stories or inflated personas. He has no need to overshare or dominate conversation to prove his worth. He speaks with intention, not to be heard but to be understood. And just as often, he listens with a presence that makes his silence more powerful than another man's noise. There is a self-possession in him, a quiet that invites curiosity, rather than satisfying it too quickly. Mystery arises when a man is deeply connected to something beyond the surface of life. He's curious not just about the world, but about himself. He's unafraid to sit with complexity, with paradox, with uncertainty. This depth creates a magnetic quality because it invites a woman into a layered experience. She senses that every moment with him reveals just a piece of something larger, and not because he's hiding, but because there is more to discover. The man who knows himself in layers cannot be consumed in one conversation, one night, or one relationship phase. That sense of eternal becoming, that's what draws people in. In a world full of performative connection, where everyone is selling their best version and fast intimacy is confused with real closeness, depth is rare. And what is rare becomes desirable. A man who is at home in his solitude, who finds beauty in stillness, who isn't addicted to constant stimulation. He doesn't chase validation because he's too busy cultivating inner substance. Women don't just want a partner, they want to be enlivened. They want to feel something awakening in them, and nothing awakens a woman more than meeting someone who lives with emotional depth, with philosophical wonder, with creative energy that comes from within, not from an external need to impress. This kind of mystery is not something you manufacture. It is something you embody through emotional maturity and inner work. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about being hard to label. It's about allowing space for unanswered questions. It's about being secure enough not to rush connection, confident enough to let her discover you over time, instead of handing over a complete image on the first date. Real mystery respects the intelligence and intuition of the other person. It doesn't deceive, it invites. It doesn't manipulate. It reveals slowly over time through authenticity and emotional resonance. A woman doesn't fall in love with what is obvious. She falls in love with what touches her soul in ways she can't fully explain. She becomes attached not to the details of your resume, but to the way your presence makes her feel more alive, more seen, more curious. And when you have depth, when your mystery comes from the richness of your inner world, she won't feel the need to decode you. She'll want to explore you. Not because you're hiding, but because you're worth discovering. In every relationship, there comes a moment when things get uncomfortable, when silence stretches too long, when emotions rise beyond language, when needs collide or vulnerability exposes what is raw and unprocessed. This is the space where many disconnect, where people rush to fix, avoid, blame, or escape. But for the man who can sit with discomfort, who doesn't flinch when things get messy, who doesn't abandon himself or the other person when intimacy becomes complex, he becomes a rare anchor in a world that is emotionally fragile. That capacity to remain grounded through emotional intensity, to hold discomfort with maturity and presence, is what creates deep, unwavering trust. Women are not seeking a man who is emotionally perfect. They are looking for someone who is emotionally safe. Emotional safety does not come from avoiding conflict or offering constant reassurance. It comes from knowing that the person sitting across from you will not disappear psychologically or physically when things get hard, that he won't shut down when you cry, become defensive when you express a need, or lash out when he feels inadequate. The man who can stay present when his own discomfort rises, who can regulate his nervous system without outsourcing it to control or detachment, communicates something essential. You are safe to be your full self here. I won't run. This emotional strength is not loud. It's not about stoicism or pretending not to feel. In fact, it's the opposite. It is about allowing yourself to feel everything: anger, sadness, fear, rejection, and still choosing to respond with clarity rather than react with chaos. It's about being able to say, I'm triggered, but I'm here. Or this is difficult, but I won't abandon myself or you. That level of self-holding invites a depth of connection that cannot be accessed through charm, looks, or status. Because in the end, love isn't tested when things are easy. It's tested when things are hard. The man who can hold discomfort has usually faced himself. He has looked at his own wounds, his unmet needs, his inherited beliefs about masculinity and vulnerability. He has learned that strength is not the absence of emotion, but the capacity to move through it without projecting it. He has failed and learned. He has been rejected and risen. He has confronted his shadow and chosen growth over ego. That process doesn't make him perfect. It makes him capable of being intimate without collapsing, capable of witnessing someone else's pain without needing to fix it to feel okay, capable of holding silence without panic, emotion without fear, truth without resistance. This presence doesn't just calm a woman's anxiety, it opens her. It allows her nervous system to settle, her guard to lower, her deeper truth to emerge. When a woman feels that a man can stay emotionally available in the presence of her intensity, her ambiguity, her hurt, she begins to trust. And trust is what allows love to deepen, to mature, to expand beyond the performance of romance into something real. It is not the absence of conflict that determines relationship success. It is the presence of someone who can stay when conflict arises, who can breathe through the fire without needing to control it, who can sit in the unknown and still choose connection. True irresistibility is not found in tactics, looks, or charm. It is born from deep inner alignment. A man becomes magnetic, not because he is flawless, but because he is whole. He knows that presence is more valuable than perfection, that emotional independence is more attractive than pursuit, and that self-respect is the foundation of true desire. He understands that mystery is not a mask, but a reflection of his depth, his richness, his inner world. And above all, he recognizes that love is not built on comfort, but on the ability to remain steady through discomfort, to stay open, grounded, and emotionally available even when things feel uncertain. In embodying these truths, a man doesn't just become irresistible to most women, he becomes deeply, authentically himself. And from that place, connection becomes not a performance, but a sacred meeting of two whole beings.